Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The daily news publication Rzeczpospolita reported that the current head of the European Council, Donald Tusk, will be directly involved in the new political initiative in Poland in an attempt to come out ahead in the 2019 Polish parliamentary election over the current ruling Law and Justice Party.
The new initiative will be called the June 4th Movement, in reference to the 30th anniversary of the partially free elections of 1989, when the communists started to gradually share the ruling powers over Poland with a handful of controlled opposition. The first independent government was formed over 2 years later, in December of 1991, and was toppled by former communists on June 4th, 1992. The name June 4th Movement therefore sees controversy for being associated, in some circles, with the return of the old guard from the former communist ranks. Prior to his political career in the EU, Donald Tusk was the chairman of the Civic Platform, the main Polish opposition party. The Civic Platform is now under leadership of Grzegorz Schetyna, and the possible return of Tusk is likely to raise tensions. Grzegorz Schetyna is not a politician who forgets and will resent the step taken by Donald Tusk for sure. I think he will do everything to ensure that the return of Donald Tusk to politics in Poland is extremely difficult. If Donald Tusk wants to return to Polish politics, he must have his own structures to start his bid in the future presidential campaign. This is how I interpret the news about the new movement. The June 4th Movement is to be something bigger than a party and aim to unite all oppositional forces, though the movement sees resemblance to that of the present Civic Platform chairman's initiative to create a new anti-government coalition, which was said to brought about the downfall of the parliamentary club of Nowoczesna party. The recent rankings reflect Donald Tusk to be the strongest opposition politician, with the highest chances to win the presidential elections in 2020. Everyone is taking that into consideration, and he could be the representative of the wide democratic opposition camp. But at the same time, he has his tasks before the fall of this year, and we have to consolidate our forces without counting on him to come to our aid. The political commentator Rafał Ziemkiewicz believes that the name June 4th Movement could easily be interpreted as the return to the old agreement between communists and soft anti-communists, known as the Round Table, and naming a movement with reference to the partially free elections of 1989 would be a political suicide. Personally, I think that this news is not a rumor. I think this will happen. In my opinion, Donald Tusk did not invent the idea. He simply got the order from his superiors that he must return Poland to the oligarchy currently ruling in the EU. I think that much of his political maneuvers speak for the very fact. The term in the EU office comes to an end in the fall of 2019, and if rumors of Tusk's return to Polish politics are true, it is possible that his term will be shortened.
The diplomatic spat between France and Italy has been taken to a new level as France recalled its ambassador from Rome due to the alleged unacceptable behavior by members of the Italian government. The issue centers around migration policy, Italian support for the Yellow Vest protest movement, and Italy's decision to shed light on French neo-colonial practices in Africa.
Relations between France and Italy worsened as soon as the new populist government took power in Rome. A spokesperson of Macron's party told the media that the policies of the Italian government made him want to vomit, while the French European Commissioner Pierre Moscovici called the Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini Little Mussolini. In return, both Salvini and his coalition partner Luigi Di Maio, the party leader of the Five Stars movement, have praised the French Yellow Vest protest movement, as well as condemning France for neo-colonial practices in West Africa. The spokesperson of the French government, Benjamin Griveaux, says that the Italian support for the Yellow Vest is unacceptable. For many months, France has been the subject of repeated accusations and attacks without basis from two members of the Italian government, Mr. Di Maio and Mr. Salvini. There was a call to vote against the president, to support the Yellow Vest movement and to question France's initiative in Africa. Meanwhile, the Italian Minister of Transport and Infrastructure, Daniele Toninelli, says that Di Maio's recent meeting in France with representatives of the Yellow Vest movement is completely normal, since the Five Stars movement is planning to invite the Yellow Vest to their political group in the EU after the elections to the European Parliament in May. The fact that Di Maio and the Five Stars movement, a major political force in Italy, met some representatives of an opposition political force in France is not strange, and it is not meant to put any pressure on the French government. The French government has allies in Europe, with political parties in opposition in Italy. Is this strange? Do we need to protest the fact that President Macron is allied with the opposition parties in Italy? It's the first time France withdraws its ambassador from Rome since the Second World War. Commentators argue that the conflict is expected to continue at least until the European elections in May.
According to the latest opinion poll conducted by the estimator pollster on a request of the dojecia.pl website, the currently ruling Law and Justice Party would still come out on top in the upcoming parliamentary elections, although it would need to form a coalition with some other parties to hold majority. The new left-wing party Spring would finish third, which would be a great outcome this early in its conception.
The 39.7% polled by the publication would get the Law and Justice Party 224 seats in the parliament, which would not be enough to have majority. The biggest opposition party, the Liberal Centre Civic Platform, would finish second with 28.2% of the votes, that is 157 mandates. According to the survey, the recently established Robert Biedroń's Spring Party would get the score of 8.6%, which would amount to 31 mandates. The last two political groups that would get into parliament would be the Cookies 15 movement with 7.4% or 27 mandates, and the Polish People's Party with 5.9% or 20 mandates.
Security at the U.S. southern border tightens as 2,000 migrants gathered at the border in the city of Piedras Negras of Mexico across Texas, hoping to enter the U.S. The migrants attempting to cross into Texas through the Eagle Eye crossing are now in a temporary shelter guarded by military police.
The US President Donald Trump has taken a tough stance on immigration, especially against the Central American migrant caravans, and is considering the suspension of granting asylum to migrants who cross the US-Mexico border illegally in hopes to slow down the thousands of Central Americans entering the United States. Meanwhile, the Mexican government has been offering work visas for the migrants as an alternative for those immigrants pressing the border with economic incentives. I'm waiting to see if the Mexican authorities will help find a job. The idea for mothers with children is to ask for political asylum on the other side. If we can't realize our dreams, it's difficult to go back. For those that want to go to the US, hopefully they get the chance to realize their dreams. If not, then go back to your country, because it's better to come back alive than dead. In the recent State of the Union address, the US President Donald Trump brought attention yet again to illegal immigration and the financial strain and safety hazards they impose on the Americans. President Trump has stated that any migrants seeking asylum will have to wait in Mexico whilst the claim is heard. But this has not deterred these migrants south of the border.
That's it for today. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report.